Good afternoon, friends. It's an absolute pleasure to be here amongst this august audience. I represent RSA. RSA is a Dell Technologies company. We primarily focus on cybersecurity. I believe we had some points around cybersecurity being a huge disruptor in this digital world, and smart cities is again one of the digital initiatives being taken in the country. What I plan to do in the next 15 minutes or so is to take you through what our thoughts around cybersecurity are, and what are the initiatives which some of the smart city infrastructure should be taken so that we are a more secure and a happy community. So typically, everyone's aware, cyber threat is almost everywhere. We hear about ransomware attacks, breaches, website compromises. Honestly, if you really ask me, the next battle is going to be the cyber battle and not on the forefronts of our borders for that matter. Look at from a perspective of criminals, there is a menu card available on the darknet where for a certain amount of dollars I can compromise a network, get down a few websites, or penetrate an organization and stuff like that. So primarily, if you see, the motive is increasing, and we see more and more attacks happening. So some of the risks which are there associated with the IoT, because that's where we're talking about smart city. So that's something which we want to focus upon. Some of the risks which are there with regards to privacy concerns, some of the risk on the identity part of it, IoT security itself. Honestly, these products have been built, but have they really been tested with regards to what's the security posture? That's something which needs to be looked into. So there is a lot of fear amongst a lot of people of what if a compromise happens, or what if a critical infrastructure is brought down. So I got certain updates from the internet. So there was an attack in the Ukraine, in Kyiv, some time back, where the whole power grid or the grid of the city was got down, and that was an attack by Russia. Just think about it. What effect would a smart city infrastructure have if someone was able to compromise your network? Honestly, there's not much security being built into the kind of RFPs which are coming through. There is some very basic stuff, but I think we need to look at it in a larger, holistic point of view of what is happening. So that's absolutely for real. I'd gone to the certain website, and picked up a few details around IP cameras or CCTV cameras. They are vulnerable. So if someone wants, he can just get into it and get into your network and compromise this whole thing. So some of real examples in the world, which we need to look at. Sorry. So generally, when we talk about security, it's a very complex subject, and we talk about things like, SQL injection and stuff like that. Honestly, it is very confusing, and it's better to leave it to the experts to handle it. It's where what is more important from an organization point of view, or from a smart city CEO point of view, or whoever is heading is what is the business risks involved. How do I make sure that there is availability of a smart city infrastructure in case something goes bad, or if someone is compromised, how bad is that, or what exactly information has leaked, what is happening? Those are some of the questions which keep coming. And honestly, we call this a gap of grief, because technology, honestly, vendors like us and others who are there, we talk a lot about jargons, and honestly, people are not able to relate that to the risk or the business risk involved in it. So that's where this gap has to be bridged. So there are people who need to understand where technology and business risks go hand in hand. And that's where we are talking about security being a business risk. Okay? So because the perimeter is kind of disappearing, we all know that. In a smart city infrastructure, there are so many things which are going to come in, and it's going to be a one central command and control kind of an organization. So the involvement at the highest level is very critical. Unless there is someone at the highest level who is really involved, because the consequences of a compromise can be humongous, and we're not even thinking about what can really go wrong if something like that happens. So little technical, honestly, apologies for being a little technical here, but what we are really seeing here is most smart city infrastructures, RFPs which have come out, are primarily more prevention oriented. You have layers of security devices, and people are of the opinion with this in place, we will be able to stop an imminent attack or a compromise in your network. Honestly, we don't feel that way, and we feel that this preventive kind of an approach in information security is not going to help. Though it is important, we won't say that it is not important. It is one of the key pillars, but there has to be a paradigm shift from a prevention only mode to a detection and a response mode. The chance of a network being compromised are humongous. You will get compromised. But what do you do? What is your resilient model? How do you respond to an attack situation? That is something which we need to think about and go forward with. So if you see today's priorities, it's primarily in the RFPs talk about prevention, and there's very little about monitoring. We have the ICC, the Integrated Command and Control, but it's more from an availability point of view. There is nothing from a security standpoint. What do we do about security monitoring? Are we monitoring all our peripheral devices? Are we looking at what's happening on the other infrastructure which is there? So that's where we are of the firm belief with regards to that. First, from a perimeter point of view, there should be augmentation of security at all layers, whether it is the network layer or the payload layer or the endpoint layer. So it's important that there is visibility across all these three layers on what exactly is happening and keep monitoring on a regular 24/7 basis, which has been kind of reiterated by Gartner and Frost & Sullivan as well, that basic technologies of prevention are not really or not doing their job. We need to augment that. That's where we talk about the advanced level of security product lines around network forensics or sandboxing or advanced monitoring with regards to machine learning and AI, stuff like those, which has given rise to a concept of a SOC, a Security Operations Center. So we have, I would say, the traditional NOC in the IT parlance for a very long time. We have network monitoring centers. We're seeing the uptime, availability of equipments which are running and stuff like that. But no one really talks about a SOC. And honestly, a SOC has to be independent of an ICC. It has to be absolutely different because, the NOC vendor and the SOC vendor cannot be the same, because, it doesn't really gel with the business models which are there. So what we are really trying to say is that, in a smart city infrastructure, there has to be a dedicated security operations center whose whole idea is to try and look at what's happening from a security standpoint. That's the matrix. That's what needs to be looked at. A little technical slide again, but some of the components which go into an intelligence-driven SOC, in terms of threat intelligence or what are we doing around the automation or the orchestration part of it. So what we are trying to really say that next generation smart cities have to have security operations center, which is a practice globally. By the way, all leading cities today in the globe have a smart security operations center which is trying to look at the security part of it and not the availability part of it. So what's important in a security operations management is the people. We talk a lot about technology, boxes, appliances, software, stuff like those. What really people forget about is the people. These are the guys who are really sitting there and monitoring. Honestly, skill levels on security are very rare and limited in the country. That's a huge challenge which we have. But when you look at a SOC, they play a very critical role. So we need to have people who are qualified enough to look at monitoring on exactly what are the alerts coming in, how to prioritize the alerts and stuff like that. Second is how to define processes in terms of repetitive actions which are being taken by analysts, whether it's an L1 or a L2 or a SOC manager and stuff like that. And finally is the technology piece. Honestly, we are of the opinion that technology just plays about 30 to 40% of the overall schema. It's the process and the people which do the 60 to 70%. That has to change. Most vendors, IT vendors, would come in and say, okay, we buy this technology and everything's going to change. Honestly, that's not the way it's going to happen with the security industry for sure. We need to also look at from a perspective of incident response. We really do not have a response procedure. Why we are saying that is, we are of the opinion that, given an opportunity to a hacker, it's just time he will penetrate any network, whatever your level of security is. Okay, so he'll find a loophole. Whether it's going to take him 6 months or 1 year, he'll get in. But is there a process in place to look at incident response? Or what if a breach happens? Are we ready? Are we ready tomorrow if, let's say, some of these smart cities are down because of a breach in their network because of a security standpoint? So those are some of the thoughts. I'm just trying to say, think about it on what catastrophic levels could happen in case some of this happens in one of these smart city infrastructures. Again, we are talking about processes here. Do we have an IR plan? Do we have a plan in place? I've seen some great documents on RFPs, but honestly, these are some of the areas which are absolutely missing, which we really want some of the leaders here to try and look at and see what we could do about this with regards to an IR plan. A little bit about what we do. Some of our offerings. Primarily we want to have an offering which is related to business. So we call it business-driven security. We have solutions around risk mitigation. We have solutions around identity management. We have solutions around fraud risk. We monitor the darknet. We want to see what's happening. Everyone's aware of the internet. There is a darknet on the underworld net which is there, where anything can be done. Anything illegal, which doesn't happen in the real world, it can be done on the darknet side of it. What's happening? Is there a next target, or are someone thinking about it? There's lots of pressure from nation-state attacks, like maybe our neighbors who are there, stuff like those. So a lot of stuff which RSA or Dell Technologies which we do together. Some of the key outcomes which I would want to reiterate the fact, one is accelerated detection and deep visibility. So that's something very critical. We need to look at having each and every item, or whether each and every IoT device to be monitored in an infrastructure of what exactly is happening, which device is going wrong, which device is behaving abnormally. Second, determine your crown jewels. Not everything can be categorized as important. You need to categorize very clearly that these are your most important and the others are not that important, so that you can do high level of protection to the crown jewels which are there as compared to the other assets which are there. The incident response framework. Honestly, no one's even talking about it currently. Everyone's more interested in pushing in a few boxes or a software. Have we got a plan in place in case disaster strikes? What is our incident response plan? Do we have a framework around it? Those are some of the areas to be thought around. And last, I think there's a lot of talk around collaboration. What we really want is, can we set up smart city, I would say, certs. Like, we have certs coming in for the financial sector, or certs coming in for the other sectors which are there. It is specific and very clearly for a specific vertical. So can we have a nodal body, wherein they look at what are the security concerns around smart city infrastructure, and because honestly, each individual smart city doing it probably would not be the right way. So maybe collaboration around that is something which is very critical. And honestly, attackers will attack. There will be a compromise. But what's more important is there a loss? Is there a loss in terms of data, or is there a loss in terms of availability or an uptime of the infrastructure? That is something which is very clear. And what we really want would be that and because most of us talk about the compromise of network. So there will be a compromise, but if there is a breach, there is an exfiltration of data, which can happen. So honestly, that's what I had. What I only want to leave this dais with would be, I think there has to be a radical thought process change around security, which especially from the Digital India or from a smart city initiative. And honestly, we will be more than happy to engage and try and see how that could be addressed. Thank you very much.